The applause from last week's award ceremony was still ringing in my ears when the silence hit. That thick, choking silence that only happens in a conference room right before something awful is about to be said. Ellis, our division director, stood at the head of the table with his trademark smirk, the kind that made your stomach twist. Behind him, the Golden Industry Award gleamed on the shelf, the one my team had won for innovation in global logistics. And yet, no one in that room looked happy. "Let me be perfectly clear," Ellis said, tapping the folder in front of him like a judge about to deliver a sentence. "Your recent success has created some tension in the department." "Tension?" I repeated, keeping my voice even. I'd learned long ago that anger only made men like Ellis more comfortable. We delivered record profits. We tripled efficiency metrics. We saved the company over $7 million in one quarter. And that's a problem? Ellis adjusted his cufflinks, the faint glint of his Rolex catching the light. "You're outshining your peers, Lisa." It's creating resentment around the table. 12 exhausted faces stared back at him. My team. The people who had worked nights, weekends, holidays to pull off the impossible. "I'm sorry," said Nora, our analytics lead, blinking in disbelief. "We're being punished for doing our jobs too well?" Ellis gave a thin smile. "No one's being punished. We're simply rebalancing workloads to maintain harmony across divisions' harmony. The corporate euphemism for obedience." "So," said Marcus, our systems engineer, his voice shaking slightly, "we're doing double the work now? With the same pay?" Ellis folded his hands. "That's correct. I trust a high-performing team like yours can handle it. Consider it a compliment." The room went dead silent. I could almost hear the collective breaking point of 12 people who had given everything. A few chairs creaked. No one dared to look at me. "I missed my brother's graduation for that project," whispered Elena, our project manager. "And now we're being told it made others feel bad?" Ellis straightened his tie. "You'll find that in any large organization, individual glory doesn't last long. What matters is stability." I felt something click inside me. That strange cold clarity that shows up right before the storm. "Understood," I said calmly, rising from my seat. "Everyone from Team Delta, my office." Now Ellis frowned. "We're not finished here, Lisa." "Oh, we are," I said, gathering my notes. "You've made your position very clear." I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. But as we walked out, one by one, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow, the silence was louder than any protest could have been. Once everyone had crowded into my small office, I shut the blinds and locked the door. For a few moments, no one spoke. The air was heavy, brittle. "This is where you tell us to hang in there, right?" Marcus said finally. "That we should just be grateful we still have jobs?" "No," I said quietly, leaning against my desk. "This is where I tell you something I've been keeping to myself for a few weeks." 12 pairs of eyes lifted, tired but curious. 2 months ago, I continued, I received a message from someone on the board. Her name is Miriam Holt. That name changed the air instantly. Miriam Holt, co-founder of the company, semi-retired, and practically a legend. She reached out because she noticed something strange in our division metrics. How every team that starts overperforming eventually gets restructured or dissolved. "You mean sabotaged?" said Nora bluntly. I nodded. Her words, not mine. Elena frowned. "So what does she want?" She wanted proof. Real proof that innovation here isn't rewarded. It's smothered. She asked me to keep going, to push as hard as possible, to see what happens when a team delivers something undeniable. Marcus blinked. "So this was a test?" I shook my head. "No. The work we did was real. The results were real. But now we have our answer. They punished us for excellence. And now we act." A low murmur swept through the room. "Act how?" Nora asked cautiously. I reached into my drawer and pulled out a folder. Thick, bound, and stamped confidential. "What's that?" Options, I said. Miriam and I have been planning something. A new venture, independent, fully funded. She's offering us a chance to build what they keep destroying. Innovation without punishment. Every one of you has a place there. No one moved. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Are you saying leave? All of us? I looked at the tired, brilliant faces around me. The same people who'd turned late nights into miracles. Yes, I said simply. Leave. Together, silence again. But this time it was electric. Somewhere deep in my chest, I felt the tension shift from despair to possibility. Ellis thought he was teaching us humility. But what he really did was give us a reason to rise. And he had no idea what was coming next. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the folder Miriam had sent me. The one that could change everything. Her proposal was bold, almost reckless. A fully funded innovation subsidiary under a separate holding company, free from the bureaucracy that had been strangling progress for years. Each of my team members would receive a stake, full creative control, and protection clauses to prevent exploitation. But it was more than that. It was an opportunity to build something clean. Something that didn't punish people for caring. Still, I knew the risk. People had mortgages, kids, student loans. Walking away from the stability of a corporate paycheck wasn't something you decided overnight. By 7 a.m., I was back at the office, running on caffeine and conviction. When I entered, the usual buzz was gone. My team sat at their desks in silence, the award plaque glinting mockingly in the corner. The "Congratulations" banner from last week still hung crooked on the wall. Someone had torn part of it down. I called them into the conference room, not Ellis's, ours. Before we do anything, I began, I need to know where everyone stands. You've all read the proposal. Be honest, Marcus spoke first. I've been in this company 8 years. Every time we break a record, we get reassigned or ignored. I'm done. Nora crossed her arms, her eyes tired but sharp. I want to believe this isn't suicide. But if Miriam's really backing it, maybe it's worth the risk. Elena hesitated. My husband's between jobs. Losing steady income isn't something I can just gamble with. I get it, I said softly. This isn't about pressure. It's about options. Dylan, our quiet data specialist, finally spoke. You think Ellis will just let 9 people walk out with the company's best clients? He'll bury us. He wasn't wrong. I'd spent years watching Ellis maneuver, always smiling, always ruthless. That's why we do this carefully, I said. No leaks, no grand exits. We prepare our transition files, hand everything over cleanly. No one can accuse us of sabotage. Nora raised an eyebrow. You're talking like we've already decided. Not yet, I replied, but we need to act like we might. For the next few days, we played the part of the perfect team. We hit deadlines, we attended meetings, we smiled at Ellis's hollow pep talks. But behind the curtain, we were building something. Every lunch break turned into a strategy session. Dylan set up encrypted cloud storage for our research archives. Elena and Marcus mapped out which client contracts were ending soon, the ones we could legally approach once our non-compete period passed. I even found myself in a quiet corner cafe one evening, meeting Miriam face-to-face for the first time. She was older than I expected. Silver hair, steady gaze, the kind of presence that silences a room without needing to raise her voice. You're certain about this? She asked, stirring her tea. Once you move, there's no going back. I'm certain about the people I'm bringing, I said. They deserve better than what this place has become. Miriam nodded. Good. Then it's time we stopped waiting for change and started making it. Before leaving, she handed me a small flash drive. Everything you need to register the new entity. The paperwork is already approved. Just pick a date. I slipped it into my pocket, my heart pounding. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have. By Friday, the tension was palpable. Ellis strutted through the office that morning with fake cheer. Big week ahead, team, he said loudly. We've decided to shift some of your projects to other departments for alignment. Translation: dismantling us piece by piece. Marcus muttered under his breath. He's cutting us apart before we can even move. I looked up. Then we move faster. That evening, when everyone had clocked out, I called a private meeting in the office break room. Lights off, blinds drawn. Here's where we stand, I began, sliding Miriam's updated documents across the table. Funding confirmed. Legal protections in place. The new entity goes live Monday morning, gasps, whispers, then silence. Dylan rubbed his temples. That's in 2 days. Yes, I said. We walk in Monday, submit our resignations together, and walk out with dignity. We don't steal clients. We don't take confidential data. We just leave and start building. Elena's voice cracked. You really think they'll just let us go? I met her eyes. They can't stop people from quitting. And if Ellis tries anything, he'll have to explain to the board why the award-winning team all vanished at once. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus stood, holding out his hand. Let's do it. One by one, the others followed. Nora, Dylan, Elena, Sage, Faye, and the rest. 12 hands joined in silent agreement. We weren't rebels. We weren't saboteurs. We were exhausted professionals reclaiming our worth. As they left that night, I lingered by the office window. Across the street, the city lights blurred into motion, alive, relentless, unstoppable. In that reflection, I saw something I hadn't in months: purpose. Ellis thought fear would keep us small. He didn't realize that when you push people past their limit, you don't break them. You forge them. And come Monday, he would learn just how strong we'd become. Monday morning arrived colder than usual. I woke before sunrise, the city still half asleep, my thoughts louder than the traffic outside. On the counter, 12 sealed envelopes sat in a neat row, each one containing a resignation letter I'd reviewed twice over. Every signature represented courage. Every page, a quiet rebellion. I poured coffee, my hands trembling slightly, and told myself it was the caffeine. It wasn't. By 8:15, the office floor buzzed with its usual mix of chatter and keyboard clicks. Ellis's door was already closed. He was probably polishing another speech about team harmony. I walked past his office without looking in, my pulse steady, my expression calm. No one could know what was coming. One by one, my team arrived. Marcus nodded at me as he passed my desk, eyes sharp but determined. Nora mouthed a quick, "Ready." Even Elena, who'd been the most hesitant, gave a small, trembling smile. We had planned everything down to the minute. At 8:30, we gathered by the glass wall outside the main conference room. Our 12 envelopes sat in a small box I carried against my chest. When I pushed the door open, Ellis looked up from his laptop. Lisa? Is this about the new workload structure? I told you the decision's final. This isn't about that, I said, placing the box on the table. He frowned, watching as my team filed in behind me. Silent, composed, standing shoulder to shoulder. I lifted the lid and slid the envelopes across the glossy surface one by one. What's this? He asked. Our resignations, I said simply. The sound in the room shifted. Air conditioning, footsteps outside, someone dropping a pen. Everything suddenly louder. Ellis blinked, his face unreadable for a moment, then twisted into disbelief. You're quitting? All of you? Yes, I said, effective immediately. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You're joking. You think you can walk out and I'll just let you? I'm not asking permission. Ellis's jaw tightened. You realize how this looks? Abandoning your projects mid-quarter, jeopardizing client contracts? You'll never get hired in this industry again. Nora stepped forward. We've given this company years of our lives. You doubled our workload after we brought home an award. If you think we owe you loyalty after that, you've lost touch with reality. Careful, he snapped. You're walking a fine line between ungrateful and self-destructive. I folded my arms. We're not being ungrateful, Ellis. We're reclaiming self-respect. For a moment, no one breathed. Then he leaned back, smirking. You'll regret this, Lisa. All of you will. You think Miriam Holt is going to protect you? She's barely on the board anymore. I didn't answer. He didn't know that the paperwork for the new subsidiary had already been filed, signed off by Miriam and quietly approved by 2 other board members. We weren't walking into chaos. We were walking into structure. Ours. When we turned to leave, Ellis called after me. You're finished in this industry. Mark my words, I didn't look back. You've already said that to better people than me. And yet somehow they're still standing. We didn't go home. We walked together to a small co-working space Miriam had rented for us across town. The moment we stepped inside, it hit me. The smell of fresh paint, new desks, untouched walls. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Marcus let out a low whistle. Hard to believe this is real. It's real, I said, setting my bag down, but it's going to get messy. He looked at me, brow furrowed. You think Ellis will come after us? He'll try. He can't afford to let 9 top performers walk out quietly. He'll spin the story however he needs to. As if on cue, my phone buzzed, a notification from our internal messaging system. A company-wide email had just gone out. Effective immediately, several members of Team Delta have been reassigned following internal restructuring. We wish them the best in their future endeavors. I could almost hear Ellis dictating it, carefully sanitizing the truth. But what caught my attention wasn't the message. It was the timestamp. 8 minutes after we'd left the building. Nora leaned over my shoulder. He's already rewriting the narrative. Of course he is, I muttered. That's what people like Ellis do. But even as frustration bubbled up, something steadier anchored me. Resolve. He could twist the story, but he couldn't erase our work, our results, or what we were building now. That afternoon, we unpacked laptops, shared passwords, divided tasks. Faye set up new databases. Marcus tested software architecture. Elena contacted a few vendors we'd worked with over the years. Strictly post-contract, no violations. It wasn't glamorous, but there was a spark in the air, an energy I hadn't felt in months. Around 5 p.m., Miriam walked in, a faint smile playing on her lips. Well, she said, surveying the room. You did it. Barely, I said. Ellis has already started damage control. She nodded. Let him. The board's eyes are on him now, not you. The results speak louder than his spin. For a moment, I just looked around the room. The tired but smiling faces, the sound of keyboards clicking, the faint scent of coffee brewing in a machine someone had brought from home. It wasn't the polished office we'd left behind, but it was alive with purpose. Miriam leaned closer. You know, Lisa, most people complain about the system. Very few actually leave it. I smiled faintly. Maybe it was time someone did. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was surviving corporate life. I was building something. And somewhere across town, I imagined Ellis pacing in his office, realizing that the people he underestimated had just done the one thing he never could. We started over. By Wednesday morning, the honeymoon phase was over. Our new workspace buzzed with energy, but tension hummed just beneath the surface. We were still waiting for the other shoe to drop. And when it did, it landed hard. At 9:02 a.m., Nora burst through the glass doors, phone in hand, eyes wide. Lisa, you need to see this. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a post on a professional networking site, a statement from Ellis, shared by the company's official page. Our organization remains committed to integrity and teamwork. Unfortunately, a small group of employees chose to resign abruptly after internal concerns were raised about data accuracy in recent award submissions. We wish them well as they pursue independent ventures. My stomach turned cold. It was subtle but deliberate. He was painting us as unethical, implying the award we'd won was based on falsified data. Marcus slammed his coffee mug down. He's calling us liars. Worse, said Nora quietly. He's calling us cheaters. I read the statement again. It was masterful in its vagueness, just enough to make people question our credibility without saying anything that could get him sued. By noon, it had hundreds of comments. Some were supportive, but many weren't. I knew those results were too good to be true. Classic corporate fraud story in the making. Our inboxes filled with polite but cautious emails from old clients. We'll be pausing discussions until things are clarified. Exactly what Ellis wanted. We can't let him control the story, said Marcus, pacing. We should release a statement too. No, I said firmly. If we react now, it'll look defensive. We need proof, Faye looked up from her laptop. I've been going through the project archives we saved. Every file, every timestamp, it's all clean. If he's altered the company's copies, we can expose it. Miriam, who had joined our morning call from her home office, nodded. You'll need to tread carefully. If you accuse him publicly without airtight evidence, he'll sue for defamation. But if you have proof of manipulation, the board will bury him. I'll find it, Faye said quietly, and she did. By Thursday night, she called me over, eyes burning with determination. Lisa, look at this. On her screen was a set of access logs from our last week at the company. Ellis had authorized maintenance on our performance dashboards, the same day several key files were modified. Look, Faye said, highlighting the timeline. He backdated entries. Our verified data was replaced with lower numbers. It was exactly what we needed. Proof that Ellis had falsified performance records to justify discrediting us. I sent it straight to Miriam, who called within minutes. This changes everything. Send me everything you've got. I'll bring it to the board. The next morning, the email came. Board of Directors, emergency session, 11 a.m. Attendees required. Lisa Mendez, former Team Delta lead. My throat went dry. It was happening. At 10:45, I walked into the corporate building for the first time since our resignation. The same receptionist greeted me. Hesitant smile, clearly aware of the rumors. My badge had been deactivated, so she called security to escort me to the boardroom. When the doors opened, Ellis was already there. Confident, relaxed, the picture of control. Lisa, he said smoothly. Good to see you. I trust your new project is going well? I didn't answer. Around the table sat 11 board members, and at the far end, Miriam, calm as ever. She gave me a subtle nod. Julian, the chairman, began. We've been informed of conflicting claims regarding last quarter's data. Mr. Ellis, you've alleged inaccuracies in Team Delta's submissions. Ms. Mendez, you've countered with accusations of falsification. We're here to clarify. Ellis leaned forward. The numbers were inflated. I took corrective action to maintain integrity. Unfortunately, Ms. Mendez and her team saw this as punishment. Integrity? I said quietly, pulling out a USB drive. Would integrity include editing verified data to make a high-performing team look like underachievers? Ellis froze. I plugged the drive into the boardroom display. These are the original files. Timestamped, archived, and cross-verified by our cloud storage before we left. You'll see a clear pattern. Altered entries made under Ellis's admin credentials. Faye's clean documentation scrolled across the big screen, each timestamp another nail in his coffin. Julian's expression hardened. Mr. Ellis, do you have an explanation? Ellis opened his mouth, then closed it again. Those logs must be fabricated. Miriam spoke, voice cutting through the tension like glass. They're not. IT has already verified them against our internal server. Lisa's files are authentic silence. The air felt heavier by the second. Finally, Julian sighed. This is serious misconduct. Ellis, you're suspended effective immediately pending further investigation. Ellis stood abruptly. You're making a mistake. I did what was necessary to protect. Enough, Julian said sharply. You protected yourself. Not the company. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. I exhaled slowly, my body shaking from the tension I'd been holding for days. Miriam looked at me, a faint smile on her lips. You did well. Most people would have folded under that kind of pressure. It wasn't just me, I said. My team's the reason this even came to light. Julian nodded. And now, thanks to that, we can start fixing what's broken. As I left the building, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. How did it go? I typed back. Better than expected. But it's not over yet. Because I knew Ellis, men like him didn't fade quietly, and something told me he wasn't done fighting. For a few days after the board meeting, the silence was almost eerie. No angry calls, no threats, no messages from Ellis. Just quiet. The kind that follows a storm. My team worked in cautious relief, still half expecting something to crash down. But the days passed, and nothing came, until the email that changed everything. It was Friday afternoon when Nora called across the co-working space. Lisa, check your inbox. Now I opened it and stared. The subject line read, Leadership Update, Corporate Announcement. Inside was a statement from the company. After a thorough investigation, the board has confirmed discrepancies in performance reporting. The division director responsible has been terminated, effective immediately. We remain grateful to former Team Delta members for their integrity and contributions to our success. Ellis was gone. Fired. Officially. For a long time, none of us spoke. Then Marcus laughed quietly, shaking his head. He really thought he could bury us. Nora leaned back in her chair, exhaling hard. You think he's somewhere reading this right now? Maybe, I said. But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore because for the first time in years, we weren't surviving someone else's game. We were building our own. Our new company, Orion Systems, grew faster than any of us had dared to predict. What started as 12 people sharing rented desks became 40 employees within 3 months. Clients who had once been off-limits reached out to us quietly, saying the same thing. We want to work with the people who actually deliver. We never poached anyone. We didn't have to. Results spoke louder than Ellis's lies ever could. Every day felt like a mix of chaos and purpose. We worked long hours again, but they didn't feel like the same endless grind. There was laughter during late-night calls, impromptu pizza runs, and whiteboards covered in wild ideas no one would have dared suggest back at the old company. Miriam visited once a week, moving slower these days but still sharp as ever. One afternoon, she pulled me aside after a team meeting. Do you know why I backed you, Lisa? I shrugged. Because we got results? She smiled faintly. No, because you refused to turn bitterness into your brand. You fought back, but you didn't destroy. You rebuilt. Most people never make it that far. I didn't have an answer for that. Maybe because part of me knew she was right. Revenge had stopped being the goal weeks ago. What drove me now was something quieter, steadier. A need to prove that excellence didn't have to come at the cost of humanity. Still, it wasn't all smooth. There were nights I lay awake wondering if we'd taken on too much. Cash flow was tight, deadlines relentless, and we were learning on the fly. But every time doubt crept in, something happened to push it back. Like the morning Elena arrived with tears in her eyes. Remember the client we lost last year because Ellis cut our budget? She said, waving an email. They want us back. Under Orion. Full contract, no conditions. The room erupted in cheers. That afternoon, as I watched my team clinking coffee cups instead of champagne flutes, I realized something simple but powerful. We weren't running away from the system anymore. We'd built a better one. 2 months later, I received an unexpected invitation. The annual industry summit, the same one where our team had been honored the year before, wanted me to give the keynote speech. The irony wasn't lost on me. The night before the event, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the last time I'd stood on that stage, smiling under bright lights, unaware of the betrayal waiting behind the applause. Now I'd be returning, not as an employee, but as a founder. When I finally stepped up to the podium, the room hushed. Dozens of familiar faces stared back at me, some curious, some skeptical. I took a breath and began. A year ago, my team stood on this stage accepting an award we were proud of. We thought recognition meant security. Instead, it exposed how fragile success can be when leadership fears those who excel. A ripple went through the audience. I learned something valuable since then, I continued. Punishing excellence doesn't make a company stronger. It kills innovation. And when you punish people for caring, they stop giving you their best. I paused, scanning the room. But here's the truth. When people are free to build without fear, they'll create something no one can suppress. That's what real leadership looks like. Applause began slowly, then spread like a wave. For the first time, it didn't feel hollow. It felt earned. Afterward, as I stepped off the stage, Miriam caught my arm. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said, smiling. "We did." That night, I walked home instead of taking a cab. The city was quiet, streetlights reflecting off glass towers that once symbolized everything I thought I needed. I passed the old building where Ellis had tried to break us. The lights on the upper floors were dark now. New management, I'd heard. A different kind of leadership. Maybe, in some small way, we'd started a ripple effect. As I crossed the street, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "We signed 3 new clients today." Guess who referred them? The bored, I smiled, tucking my phone away. Sometimes the best revenge isn't humiliation or victory. It's progress. It's walking past the wreckage of what tried to destroy you, holding your head high, knowing you turned the wound into something that grows. Ellis taught me that power can corrupt. But my team, they taught me something far greater. That excellence doesn't need permission. And it never, ever needs to apologize. Rain tapped against the wide office windows like an impatient drummer, and I remember thinking how fitting it was. That the sky itself seemed restless, just like me. My hands trembled slightly as I packed the last of my things into the cardboard box they'd given me. A framed photo of my team from 3 years ago, a mug with the company logo half faded from use, and a few pens I'd bought myself when the office stopped ordering supplies. Across the hall, through the glass divider, laughter echoed. The sound of clinking glasses, music, and celebration drifted into my empty cubicle. My boss, Richard, stood at the center of it all, his expensive suit gleaming under the fluorescent lights, holding a champagne flute high. Around him, my former colleagues were smiling, nodding, pretending not to look in my direction. Finally, I heard Richard's voice, muffled but clear enough through the glass. Someone competent. She'll clean up Ellen's mess. My fingers froze around a stack of reports. My mess. The system I built, the processes I designed, the clients I secured. All reduced to a mess. I turned just enough to see her. Amanda, the new innovation specialist they'd hired. She looked fresh out of a management seminar. Sleek ponytail, white blazer, confidence sharp as glass. She was smiling at his words, maybe politely, maybe smugly. It didn't matter. I was already being erased. Security arrived right on cue. They were polite, careful not to make it a scene. "Company policy," one of them muttered as I was escorted past the glass wall where Richard's team was raising their glasses. My reflection stared back at me. Tired eyes, rain-slick hair, and the faintest smile. Because what none of them knew, not Richard, not Amanda, not anyone, was that I'd already made my move. But we'll get to that. Right now, I was still the dismissed employee, the scapegoat, the woman who'd given 6 years of her life to a company that couldn't even spare a proper goodbye. When I reached the parking lot, the rain had turned into a full storm. The cardboard box sagged under the weight of my belongings. My car, a faded silver sedan, felt like a coffin as I sat there, staring at the neon glow of the building I'd practically lived in. 6 years. I'd built their client data architecture from scratch, the one thing that made their department profitable. And yet, Richard had been circling for months, whispering to upper management about my inefficiencies. I worked long hours, but not loud hours. Amanda, though, she was loud. She knew the right buzzwords, the right smiles. Modernize, simplify, automate words that sound smart until you realize they mean replace. I drove home through the rain, each drop a metronome to my unraveling thoughts. I didn't cry. Not that night. I just replayed the past few months in my mind. The sudden exclusion from meetings, the vague performance reviews, the subtle push to document everything I did. They wanted my system, but they didn't want me. I made myself tea when I got home, though I didn't drink it. My phone buzzed with a single email. Subject: transition completed. From Richard Hall. Body: thank you for your contributions, Ellen. Wishing you all the best in your future endeavors. Corporate condolences, sterile and cold. I laughed quietly, because my contributions were more intricate than Richard could ever comprehend. He thought he'd taken everything. He hadn't even begun to understand what he'd lost. Still, I barely slept that night. My mind kept looping through the same image. Amanda's confident smile, Richard's smug toast, the clinking of glasses. By morning, the rain had stopped. Sunlight poured into my kitchen as if pretending nothing had changed. I opened my laptop, logged into my backup system, and scrolled through lines of code and access logs. The infrastructure I'd designed. The system that ran their entire client coordination platform. The one that wasn't broken when I left, but could be if handled carelessly. At 10:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. 11:06, same number. 11:24. Another call. By noon, there were 9 missed calls. I smiled this time, not out of malice, but inevitability. Amanda had opened my files. You see, what Richard never understood is that my work wasn't just a checklist of functions or formulas. It was alive, adaptive. Every calculation, every parameter tied to context, only I understood. The documentation they demanded? It existed, of course, but not in the way they expected. Each piece referenced another, a living network designed to evolve, not obey. By the time I stepped out for lunch, the number of missed calls had reached 15. I stood on the balcony of the cafe, sipping my coffee slowly, watching clouds drift across the blue. Somewhere across the city, Amanda was probably panicking. Richard was probably shouting, and their precious system was starting to collapse under its own misunderstood complexity. And me? I was free. But the funny thing about freedom, it doesn't always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels like standing at the edge of everything you once believed in, watching it fall apart, and realizing you built the storm that's about to begin. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone had 38 missed calls. Most were from an unfamiliar number, but a few were from numbers I recognized. Former colleagues, people who'd stayed silent at that champagne toast. There were messages, too, fragments of panic that didn't make sense until I pieced them together. Ellen, please, we need to talk. Something's wrong with the system. It's crashing every hour. No one can fix it. The clients are furious. Richard's losing it. I stared at the screen for a long time, watching the little red notification count climb as new messages appeared. A quiet satisfaction warmed somewhere deep inside me, but it didn't feel as good as I imagined it would. Maybe because I knew what was coming. Chaos, lost data, angry clients, the very things I'd spent years preventing. Still, I didn't answer. Instead, I got dressed, made coffee, and went for a walk. The November air was cold and sharp. It cleared my head. People passed me on their way to work, clutching travel mugs, talking into phones, unaware that somewhere in the heart of the city, one company's lifeline was unraveling thread by thread. I'd seen it coming. The week before my firing, Richard had pushed for system simplification. He'd wanted control, shorter code, fewer dependencies, things that looked neat on paper but ignored the messy reality of human behavior and data. He didn't understand that the system was built around adaptive patterns. It learned, responded, predicted. It wasn't broken. It was alive. But Richard never liked anything he couldn't fully control. When I returned home, I made the mistake of opening my email. There were 20 new messages waiting. The latest was from Richard himself. Subject, urgent. Please respond. Ellen, we need your assistance immediately. Amanda's having issues with your setup. Something about client integrations failing. We're willing to compensate you for a consultation. Just a few hours of your time. Please call me back. Compensate. That word made me laugh out loud. As if money could make up for 3 years of late nights, missed birthdays, stress migraines, and the humiliation of being escorted out while they celebrated my replacement. I closed my laptop. For a few hours, I tried to distract myself. I did laundry. I even cooked, something I hadn't done in weeks. But every few minutes, my phone would buzz again. More missed calls. More messages. By the time I sat down for lunch, there were 67. Curiosity got the better of me, and I finally listened to one voicemail. It was Amanda. Ellen, it's me. Look, I think something's wrong with the integration mapping. Every time I try to reset the node, the system rejects the changes. The error logs keep referencing your username, even though we deactivated it. I can't fix this. Please, just call me back. Her voice was trembling. That sharp confidence she'd displayed at the party had dissolved into panic. I could almost see her in that pristine white blazer, hair disheveled now, staring at screens that no longer obeyed her commands. But she wasn't wrong. The system was referencing me. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd built a safeguard months ago, when rumors about restructuring first began. A simple self-validation protocol tied to my credentials. If major edits were made without proper authorization, it would revert to a defensive mode. Not to destroy data, just to protect it from unverified manipulation. I'd told Richard about it once. He'd waved it off as over-engineering. So now, their own negligence had triggered the safeguard. And I was the only one who knew how to deactivate it. By evening, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. The phone was still buzzing on the coffee table. 83 calls by now. I didn't pick up. Instead, I thought about what all of this meant. About the quiet irony that my so-called mess had kept the company running smoothly for years. About how quick they'd been to replace me with someone who looked the part, spoke the right language, smiled at the right moments. But more than that, I thought about the people. The junior analysts, the project assistants, the interns who'd relied on that system to do their jobs. None of this was their fault. They were probably sitting in that office right now, watching everything fall apart, terrified they'd be blamed next. That thought unsettled me. I'd told myself I was done. That they deserved whatever consequences came from their arrogance. But watching the missed calls pile up, hearing Amanda's voice shaking with fear, I realized something I didn't want to admit. Part of me still cared. Not about Richard, not about the company, but about the work itself, the system I'd built, the people it was meant to help. I poured myself another coffee and opened my laptop again, logged into an old monitoring dashboard I'd kept for backup purposes. And there it was. The chaos in real time. Red alerts blinking across the screen like a city on fire. Client synchronization errors, integration failures, timeouts across every sector. The system was holding, barely, but one wrong command could send it into total collapse. I sat there for a long time, staring at those blinking warnings, listening to my phone vibrate every few seconds. Then I did something that surprised even me. I opened a new message. To Amanda.h@kleinanalytics.com. Subject: Stop. Body: Don't touch anything else. Log out immediately. I'll be in touch. Ellen, I hesitated before hitting send. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't surrender. It was something else. Responsibility, maybe. Or maybe just unfinished business. As I pressed send, another voicemail arrived. This one from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Grant, this is Linda Chen, Deputy Director from the Department of Municipal Infrastructure. We were told you designed the Klein system now failing across the city's logistics network. We'd appreciate a call back. It's urgent, I froze. The city. I'd built something too big to fail. And now, if I didn't step in, real people would suffer. And for the first time since I was fired, I realized this was never just about revenge. It was about consequences. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my blinds, but it didn't feel like a new day. It felt like a countdown. I'd barely slept after that voicemail from the city official. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dashboard. Blinking red alerts, system stalling, routes failing. What had begun as a quiet act of defiance was turning into something much bigger than I'd ever intended. By 8:15 a.m., my phone rang again. The same number. I let it go to voicemail once more. Then curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. Ms. Grant, this is Deputy Director Linda Chen following up. The traffic coordination network your company installed last quarter is malfunctioning. Emergency services are reporting delays across multiple districts. We understand you were the lead architect. Please, we need your help. Her tone wasn't angry. It was urgent. Human. The kind of voice that carries the weight of responsibility. I sat there, still in my robe, coffee cooling beside me, feeling my pulse quicken. I'd built that system to improve the city's response coordination. Deliveries, ambulances, fire units. It wasn't just about analytics anymore. It was about lives. And now it was breaking apart. My chest tightened. The arrogance of Richard and Amanda, their careless meddling, had turned a corporate mistake into a public hazard. I could almost hear Richard in some boardroom right now, sweating through his shirt, trying to spin the disaster as a temporary software anomaly. A soft buzz drew my eyes to my phone again. A new message, this time from Irene, one of the junior engineers who used to report to me. Ellen, please. The mayor's office is furious. Richard's blaming you. Says you sabotaged the system before leaving. We all know that's not true, but they're talking legal action. Please call me. I stared at the screen. Sabotage. Of course he would say that. It was easier than admitting incompetence. I took a slow breath, then dialed Irene's number. She answered immediately, her voice trembling. Ellen? Oh, thank God. Everything's falling apart. Half the city grid's down. Ambulances are getting rerouted through manual dispatch. It's chaos. Stop touching the code, I said firmly. Tell Amanda and anyone else with access to log out now. No changes. None she already tried 3 resets, Irene whispered. It's getting worse. Of course it was. Every manual override confused the adaptive logic further. The system had been designed to adjust automatically to data flows, not to constant interference. Okay, listen carefully, I said, pulling my laptop closer. You'll need to isolate the East cluster. Disconnect from the main server, but don't delete anything. Just quarantine the node. You still have access? She asked. I never lost it. I typed in a sequence I hadn't used in months, and the familiar interface bloomed on my screen. A web of data points, each representing a piece of the network, flickered to life. Half were dim or red. The system was holding on by threads. Ellen, Irene said quietly, why are you helping? After what they did? I paused, watching the pulse of the city's digital veins flicker weakly on my monitor. Because if I don't, people will get hurt. This was never supposed to happen. I could hear the hum of panic in the background. Voices, keyboards, a faint buzz of tension that told me the office was unraveling. Richard's yelling again, Irene said. He said the city's threatening to terminate the contract. Amanda's in tears. Good, I muttered before catching myself. No, not good. Tell them I'll handle this, but from now on, no one touches a single file without my instruction. When the call ended, I sat back and let out a long breath. For the first time since being fired, I felt control slipping back into my hands. Not revenge. Control. I worked through the morning, patching connections remotely, isolating corrupted modules, reversing illogical commands. It was like performing surgery on something that was still alive but bleeding badly. At noon, my doorbell rang. I froze. No one ever came to my apartment unannounced. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a navy suit holding a folder. She looked exhausted. When I opened the door, she extended a hand. Miss Grant? Linda Chen, Department of Municipal Infrastructure. Her handshake was firm, but her eyes betrayed fatigue. I'm sorry to show up like this, but this situation's escalating faster than anyone expected. I stepped aside to let her in. You must have been given my home address by Richard. She gave a faint, apologetic smile. He said you were the only one who could fix it. Did he also tell you why? She sighed. He said you embedded proprietary locks that prevent others from maintaining the code. That's not true, I replied sharply. I built safeguards, yes, but to protect the system, not to sabotage it. Your problem is that they tried to rebuild something they didn't understand. Linda sat at my kitchen table, flipping open her folder. I don't care about office politics. Right now, ambulances are being delayed by 12 to 15 minutes on average. That's human lives. Can you help us? Her words hit me like cold water. I looked down at my laptop, at the blinking red nodes, and realized how far this had gone. Yes, I said finally, but I want terms. Her eyes narrowed. Terms? I won't work through Richard or Client Analytics. If I help, I do it under direct contract with the city. Full creative control. My system, my way Linda studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. I can make that happen, but you need to act fast. I nodded, already typing, lines of code reflecting in my eyes like firelight. The city's grid was starting to pulse again, data streams shifting under my commands. Linda stood behind me, silent as I worked. After a few minutes, she whispered, You really did build something extraordinary, didn't you? Extraordinary, I said quietly, and misunderstood. By the time she left, the immediate crisis was stabilizing. A temporary patch. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because Richard would never accept that the woman he'd fired, the one he'd humiliated in front of everyone, had just saved his career. And somehow I suspected he'd try to twist it all again. But this time, I was ready. The following morning, I woke to another flood of messages. This time from unfamiliar numbers, many with official signatures. City engineers, consultants, reporters. My system fix had worked overnight. The grid was stabilizing, emergency routes were clearing, and the mayor's office had released a statement crediting an external specialist for restoring operations. An external specialist. That was me, though my name wasn't mentioned. Yet. My phone buzzed again. Irene. Ellen, you need to hear this. There's an emergency board meeting at 9. Richard's taking all the credit. Says he hired a third-party team to fix your code. I let out a dry laugh. Of course he was. Richard had always been predictable. The kind of man who lived for appearances, who'd rather lie smoothly than admit ignorance. But this time, there were witnesses. Thanks for letting me know, I said. Do you still have the link to the board's conference line? She hesitated. Ellen, you're not seriously thinking. I am. I spent the next 20 minutes preparing. I didn't have a suit or a title anymore, but I did have something better. Proof. Every change I'd made, every command executed from my console, was logged and timestamped. The city's data servers would show that my credentials had been the ones to stabilize the system. By 8:59 a.m., I clicked the link. The familiar corporate logo flashed on my laptop screen, followed by the tiled faces of the company's senior leadership. Richard was in the center, perfectly groomed, his voice smooth as he addressed the room. Yes, it was a close call, but thanks to swift action and the brilliant work of my team, we were able to restore full functionality to the system overnight. A few heads nodded. Others looked skeptical. And then one voice cut in. "Excuse me, Richard," came Linda Chen's calm tone. "That's not accurate." All eyes shifted to her square on the screen. She was seated in her office, city seal visible behind her. The system was repaired through a direct collaboration between my department and Ms. Ellen Grant, the original architect. The silence that followed was almost physical. Richard's smile faltered. "I wasn't aware of any formal involvement," he managed. "You weren't involved at all," Linda said. "You've been unreachable since yesterday morning. My team made the executive decision to bypass Klein Analytics entirely. Ms. Grant's solution prevented what could have been catastrophic failures." I watched Richard's face tighten. The micro-expressions of panic barely masked beneath corporate restraint. I decided that was my cue. "Good morning, everyone," I said, unmuting myself. My face filled one of the empty screens. Several people jumped slightly. "Ellen?" one of the board members exclaimed. Richard's composure cracked. "What are you doing here?" "This is a confidential meeting." "Apparently not confidential enough to keep the truth out," I said. "I'm here because my work saved your contract with the city. The same system you called a mess." He straightened, adopting his patronizing tone. "Let's not exaggerate. The issue was a result of undocumented features in your code. If anything, you put us in this position." I smiled slightly. "Undocumented?" "Richard, everything was documented. You just never read beyond the first page. I pulled up a file on my screen, sharing it through the meeting link. Here's the access log from the last 48 hours. You'll notice my credentials initiating the stabilizing protocols, followed by an authorization from the Department of Municipal Infrastructure. Your team's changes, on the other hand." I highlighted another column. "Caused the initial collapse." One of the board members cleared his throat. "Is that accurate, Richard?" He glanced down, jaw clenched. "I can't verify that at this time." Linda leaned forward. "I can." "My department confirmed it this morning." The chairman of the board spoke next, his voice low but sharp. "This company nearly caused a public disaster. Ms. Grant, you're saying the failures were due to unauthorized changes after your dismissal?" "Yes," I said. "And they ignored my warnings before that. I designed the system to be adaptive, not static. But Richard insisted on altering core logic to make it simpler. The result was instability that cascaded through the city's network." A murmur spread across the digital room. The chairman's face hardened. "That aligns with reports we received from the city. Richard, this is a serious breach he tried to recover. We can fix this internally. There's no need to—" But Linda cut him off. "The city has already terminated its contract with Klein Analytics. Effective this morning, Ms. Grant has been appointed as lead consultant under municipal management." The room went silent again. Richard blinked rapidly. "You can't—" "She can," I said quietly. And she did. The chairman sighed heavily. "Richard, step out of the call. The board needs a private discussion." For a brief moment, our eyes met through the screen. His expression shifted from anger to disbelief, then something almost like fear. He clicked "Leave meeting," and his square vanished. When the board returned a few minutes later, they didn't address me with hostility. One of them, a woman I'd never met, said, "Ms. Grant, on behalf of the board, I'd like to apologize for how your departure was handled. Clearly, mistakes were made." "Thank you," I said, though my tone stayed cool. "But I'm not coming back." I ended the call before they could say another word. For a long time, I sat in silence, watching my own reflection in the dark screen. It wasn't triumph I felt. Not exactly. It was relief. The truth was finally out. But deep down, I knew Richard wasn't finished. Men like him rarely accepted defeat quietly. And as much as I wanted to move on, a part of me sensed the storm hadn't fully passed. Sometimes victory isn't the end. It's just the start of the reckoning. For 2 days after the board meeting, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Reporters, recruiters, ex-colleagues. Everyone suddenly wanted to talk to the woman they'd ignored a week earlier. I didn't answer most of them. I wasn't looking for applause. I just wanted quiet. But peace rarely comes that easily. On the third morning, there was a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw him. Richard, still in one of his tailored suits, though this one looked wrinkled, like it hadn't been pressed since the chaos began. His tie hung loose, and the bags under his eyes were deep. For a moment, I considered not opening. Then curiosity won. I unlatched the door. "Ellen," he said, forcing a strained smile. "Can I come in?" "I don't think that's a good idea," I replied. He glanced around the hallway, lowering his voice. "Please, just 5 minutes." Reluctantly, I stepped aside. He walked in, the faint smell of cologne mixed with stress following him. His eyes darted to my desk, where my laptop sat open, code lines glowing faintly on the screen. "You're still working," he said quietly. "I'm improving the city's grid," I answered. "Something your team never learned how to do." He winced. I didn't come to argue. "Then why are you here?" He hesitated, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something genuine behind his polished facade. Fear. "They're letting me go," he said flatly. "Effective immediately. The board blames me for everything they should," I said. He looked at me sharply. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said softly. "But it's fair." He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "Ellen, I made mistakes, but I didn't deserve this. You've got to understand. I was under pressure from the board, from the investors. They wanted fast results. Brooke's resume looked good." "Her name's Amanda," I interrupted. "Whatever. They wanted someone who could modernize things. I thought, maybe you'd plateaued. I crossed my arms." "So you fired me to prove a point?" He looked down. "I misjudged you." I studied him for a moment. He wasn't lying. He wasn't apologizing either, not fully. It was a statement of regret, not remorse. A subtle difference, but an important one. "What do you want, Richard?" He met my eyes. "A chance to make this right. If you'd let me come on board under your new contract, maybe as an advisor, I could help smooth things with the remaining clients. I know the politics, you know the systems. Together we could—" "Stop," I said, raising a hand. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You celebrated while I was escorted out. You called my work a mess. Now you want to work for me?" His mouth opened, then closed again. "I need a second chance," he murmured. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered standing in that rain-soaked parking lot, cardboard box in hand, watching him toast to my replacement. "Richard," I said evenly, "you didn't just fire me. You erased me. You made me question my worth, my competence, my place in a field I built my life around. That kind of damage doesn't get undone with one apology. Or a new job title." He stared at the floor. For a moment he looked smaller. Just another man who'd believed his own myth for too long. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I nodded slowly. "You should be. But I don't need your apology to move forward. I already did." He turned toward the door, defeated. I guess that's that. As he stepped out into the hall, I called after him. "Richard?" He stopped. "Next time you hire someone more competent," I said, "make sure you understand what you're replacing first." He didn't answer, just nodded once and walked away. When the door closed, I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The apartment was silent except for the hum of my computer. I sat back down at my desk and looked at the new interface I'd been building. A refined version of the system, independent from any company. It wasn't just a program anymore. It was a statement. Proof that resilience can't be fired and brilliance can't be replaced. Later that afternoon, I met Linda Chen at City Hall to finalize my contract. She handed me the official document with a faint smile. Municipal Innovation Consultant, she read aloud. You'll oversee all future development and have full authority over the infrastructure network. Full authority, I repeated, letting the words sink in. You earned it, she said. The city owes you more than a paycheck. As I signed, I thought back to that first morning. The rain, the laughter, the humiliation. How small I'd felt. How certain I was that everything I'd built had been taken from me. And now here I was. Not with revenge, but redemption. When I left City Hall, the air was clear. The city hummed around me. Traffic flowing, lights synchronized, sirens cutting through intersections without delay. My system was alive again, stronger than before. I passed by Klein Analytics' glass tower on my walk home. Movers were carrying boxes out of the lobby. The logo on the wall was half removed. Richard's empire had fallen quietly, the way most empires do, from the inside. I didn't stop to watch. I just kept walking, the reflection of the city lights following me down the glass. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, my phone beside me. No missed calls, no frantic messages, just peace. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It doesn't need fire or chaos. Sometimes it's simply watching those who underestimated you realize they were never in control, and choosing not to look back. Because true power isn't about making them pay. It's about proving you never needed them to begin with.